5:32. We're going to start off with roll call and attendance. And Josh Muchart, Renee Mankey, here. Brittany Wold, here. Chase Tibbles, here. Patrick Stanton, present. Gary Epp, here. Serafini, here. John Dehan, here. Jessica Evenson, here. Todd Shiver, here. Nick Shuey, here. Renee Stiles, and Sharon Shermanson. And Joey Bryant is excused. He's on his way back from a top secret government fishing meeting at UW Tacoma, so he is on his way. Let's start with section 3, approval of the agenda. Give a couple seconds to look over it. Anybody have any questions, additions, or corrections? At this time, I'd like to entertain a motion for the agenda approval. Nick? So moved. Is there a second? Josh seconds. Any discussion? All those in favor? All those opposed? Any abstentions? Agenda's approved. Now I'd like to go to the approval of minutes from the meeting of January 7th, 2015. Couple seconds to review those. Nick?
I move to approve the minutes from January 7th.
Is there a second to Josh seconds? Any discussion? All those in favor? All those opposed? Any abstentions? Minutes are approved. Moving to reports, I have nothing to report. Obviously, that Joey is not here. He is coming back from UW Tacoma. Sharon? No other reports. Move to section 6, public comment. Is there any public comment this time? Seeing none, we can move to section 7, old business, subsection A, for the supplemental funding request, voting for supplemental request 15065, the Student Fashion Association Field Experience for the amount of $10,000. I'd like to open up the table for discussion at this point.
Nick, you want to explain some of this?
Yeah, sure. I'll go over that Excel spreadsheet that I handed out. So a little bit of what I did was I took the funding cycle that they gave us today, the supplemental funding request, and I gave it into some different scenarios. In scenario 1, for instance, instead of giving them the full amount of the $10,000 requested, I took the transportation costs out of the ask and made it down to the $7,329.56 that you see there. Or in the event, let's go to the best case scenario, just section 9. It's where they receive funding from all sources in the full amount, except for their club account, where they only use up the percentage of the amount of students in their club going, which was 74%. And in the indifferent case, they use 75% of the funds from their club account, in which they are then paying $559 per student on a per student basis, which is taken by the group contribution divided by the number of students going. In this case, is 21. Is there any questions so far?
I have a question. So you say in both this indifferent and best case, well, actually, I guess all of them, this club account is what the amount that you have there is the percentage of everybody going.
And it's different in each one.
Okay. I didn't. Can you explain why it's different?
That's part of the case of the scenario. You just give a different scenario for each one. So in the event that they didn't want to use the funds, which they said in their profile, they said they do not want to use any of the club funds, you'd say, all right, 0% of their funds go towards this, in which they would have to contribute more upfront from themselves.
Okay. Okay, that makes sense to me.
So this 1897, that's if they had used club funds like for the actual club members that are going.
Yeah.
Because it said that they don't want to use it because it wouldn't be fair to because not all club members are going.
Yeah, and I found it interesting. I actually went through the clubs and organizations paperwork, and what I saw is they currently have 29 students in their club, and we all know that there's 21 students going. So 74% of the students going, you'd think that with the majority wanting to use some of the funds, considering it's the majority of the students from the club going.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. I mean, I'm in Lawn Justice Club, and like we did the same proposal and things last year, but we used like the percentage of people going into the account. I just think it's weird that they're not wanting to use any of their funds at all. And they only fundraise, what was it, like $334 for 21 students?
In addition to that fundraising of their $334, they've been fundraising in their club account for the past 7 years. And it doesn't specify what they're saving for, but if they're going on trips and events such as this, I think they need to contribute. Well, we can't tell them that they need to contribute, but it's a concern and something that I would advise them to do.
You said there's 29 in the club?
And of those 29, I also took a percentage just to see, as we all know, this could be an expensive trip for a student to take on, and with the way that the university is facing retention ratio or retention for students, I feel that if students are spending too much, it's a hazard that they could face if they spend too much money on the trip that they may not be able to come back. So what I did is I found how many seniors, juniors, sophomores, and freshmen were in the club, and it's predominantly seniors, so that's not too big of a concern, but it's something that I think the committee should consider.
Tom?
You can refresh my memory if I'm incorrect, but I was kind of wondering. Well, first of all, it felt a little bit like more of a field trip to me than anything else. And second of all, I wasn't quite sure. I kind of always look and see, well, are they representing the university like at a national competition or a national conference, or and then I also look at what are they bringing back to the campus? Are they going to present it at CERC? Are they going to, is this going to benefit the rest of the club members who didn't go, or what the benefits are? So, this kind of, and do they say they do this every year, this trip, or is this every 3 years, or did they say?
They do a trip every year. They usually rotate between New York and Las Vegas.
And have we funded this in the past?
We have funded a percentage in the past. Probably could go up and look.
I don't remember a New York trip myself. Anyway, it's not just
John?
Well, I like Nick's idea. If you take their club account, the $28.65, and split it between the 29 kids, that's about $99 a person. And so if you leave money for the remaining 8 students, that's still $792 in the club account, which is still a decent amount. So.
I think based on this analysis that Nick has provided us, I think it's important that we focus on the supplemental request at hand and not the club account. While that is a factor, we have no control over how they spend the club account. And Nick, you did a lot of work on this, and I really appreciate it, and I'm sure everybody else in the committee does as well. But for the purposes of this supplemental funding request, let's focus on the amount requested. We can keep in mind the fact that how they may have to pay for it, but I think the account should be left out of discussion. And I also would like to, I don't want to talk too much, but I'd also like to point out something here and ask you a question, Nick. For this fundraising efforts, you say it shows that they did $334.91. Is that less the $143.62 that came from Sensi, which is only going to 6 individual students?
That's including all of their fundraising efforts. So that's the 143.62, the Warefare loss, and the Krispy Kreme fundraiser as well.
Okay, so the way I see it is that the fundraising does not, that amount does not reflect an equal share going to everybody on the trip, and I think that might be something that we need to take into account, because it is, while it was their choice to participate or not, something, almost half of that is not going to a majority of the students. We can't talk about that.
Well, you can, and I think you should. And we ask them to disclose all of the funds available to them, including their club account. So I don't think, where I think that it's important not to derail your conversation totally on focusing on their club account. It is something to take into account while coming to your decision on whether to fund, not to fund, or how much to fund. I would say it's all information that you need to consider in coming into the decision of how much, or yes or no. It's information that we say in the packet you need to disclose, so therefore you need to consider all of it.
And I agree. I guess I wasn't clear what I mean. I don't think we should focus on assuming if we the amount of money that we give them, that they're going to make up that amount of money with their club account, because that is something we have no control over. I do agree that we do need to talk about it, but not to this extent that we need to assume that that's how they will make it up, is by paying on the club fund, because we have zero control over that. I agree, Shannon. All right, Sarah?
I just want to sort of put their request into context maybe a little. They're asking for $10,000 and there's 21 students going, so that's about $475 per student. And granted, there's all sorts of different requests for different activities, and different activities have different costs. This is in New York City, it's pretty expensive. But they are having a rather large group of students go, and it is kind of a high per student cost compared to other proposals that we've approved. I know we need to focus on the proposal at hand, but I think to be fair to other groups that we've funded or not funded, we should sort of think about what we've done in the past as far as per student funding.
Nick?
I'm just a little bit disappointed, I guess, in the way that the fundraising efforts were. I mean, if you bring it down to 21 people, or 29 participated in the club. We don't know exactly how many participated in the fundraising efforts, but if you break it down by, divide those $335 by 21, it's really just, it's $7-10 a person, and I don't want us to be their backup plan or so. I think the fundraising effort should have been the first effort, and we should have been able to help them out, but we should not be in the backup plan for the last resort.
Jessica?
I don't remember. Do you remember if they said, did they do a lot of community service? Is that why they didn't fundraise as much? I just honestly can't remember. I remember they said that something about dress sale, but was that was that money going into the club account then, of the dresses that they were donating and selling to students up here?
I do not. I recall what you're talking about, but I do not recall the destination of those funds that that they got from that. I think very fair point, but I can't.
No, yeah, I mean, I was just wondering if that's one of the things they were saying they were doing, for us to give them money, but then if they're not using the club account money, and that was one of the things they brought up, I guess. That just confused me a little bit.
Okay. I think another point, just to make while we're thinking about funding and not funding or partial funding, is that we also, they want to take 21. That's a large group. If we don't fund it completely, they have the option to take less people, or they can have the option to spread that out over the 21. We don't tell them how many to take, we just, so it would be up to them what to do with it, how to use that money to supplement that trip. So, that's just something to think about too as you decide what you want to do.
Josh?
That was one of my main concerns as well, is a fairly large amount of students going, and it was more, to me it sounded like they, their advisor knows some people in the industry, so they're gonna go, to me it just sounded like they're gonna go look at stores and get a better idea for what actually goes on in I don't know, the store scenario, the setting, but compared to, I don't know, I was expecting more like a big conference, I guess, with just that many people going. So that is my main concern, is the number of people going. But that being said, I think we need to find out, we need to kind of brainstorm a way to, if we don't want to fund this 100%, find out some kind of way to fairly come up with a justifiable number, if at all. But something that I'm thinking about. Instead of just throwing out, okay, half.
They never sent us an itinerary or anything, did they? Because she said that her teacher was still working things out. We never,
There's a
I
small
know
one,
she was
but
saying
I
like
don't know.
showrooms and things like that, but we never got like a.
Might be confusing. There's another request we got, but wasn't there something along the lines with we don't know until a month out, or was that another?
I think in the PowerPoint they had
They
a
won't know
small one, but
Okay.
I think it was.
They had a rough idea, but they don't know the
Yeah.
specific stuff
Yeah,
until a month
like
out.
go through stores and then study the fashion, if you like, I guess.
I agree with you. I mean, I don't think we should just fund every request just because it's a conference. I don't think every group that benefits them the most. But I do agree with what you're saying. If we don't have any idea of what they're doing there and who they're going to see.
And like Todd had mentioned, like most groups, we really look at what's the contribution this is going to bring to
Yeah.
future students, the university currently, the people in that major studying that field.
Anyone have any ideas, money wise, or?
So, did you
So-
guys elect a parliamentarian?
Just
I what?
So at this point, you can make recommendations of what the next step would be.
Is that okay? So are we thinking that we want to fund this, at all? Not saying fully,
Is there
but
a motion on the table?
is there a motion on the table anywhere?
Does anybody want to make a motion?
Anyone want to make a motion regarding an amount to fund?
What dates are they going? Is this during our spring break?
Spring break.
if there's no motion on the table, the request will die, and they will receive no funding. Is there a motion on the table, or is anybody willing to make a motion? Motion dies. The request dies, and they will receive no funding. We'll move on to section 8, new business, base funding program reviews. We'll start with CWU Legislative Affairs. Mr. Ward. 2 minutes.
10 minutes for the presentation and then 10 minutes for questions following.
Yeah, 10 minutes.
Well, good evening, everyone. I'm Cassie DeBoer. I'm the Vice President for Legislative Affairs of the CWU Student Government, and one of my primary responsibilities is to manage the Office of Legislative Affairs. So, real quick, some of our office goals. First, to promote civic engagement and governmental awareness at Central Washington University. So among the student population, we do this through voter registration, we bring students to Olympia, things like that. We strive to win legislative victories in Olympia that have a positive impact on campus and statewide levels. So like I said, we're bringing students to Olympia, we're making sure that they're letting their legislators know what sort of things that they want as a student at Central Washington University. And we provide students with greater access to the democratic process. So some of you have probably seen the ballot box that we have outside. That was something that my office was able to do a couple of years ago. Every year on election day, we have the Election Assistance Center downstairs in the CIRC. We want to continue to put on programs that grant students access to the legislature and the democratic process. Real quick, here's the organization of our office. So you have our student government and the 5 different offices within that. So here I am with the Office of Legislative Affairs. So I oversee my staff. I have 3 staff members, and I also oversee our Washington Student Association chapter that we have here at Central. Like I said, we have 3 student employees. First, we have a political programmer. So our programmer works roughly 15 hours a week. I do want to say that some of these hours fluctuate quite a bit because in our office it really depends on what we're working on. So there might be spikes when we're doing a lot of voter registration and some troughs when we're not really working on as much. I did have a programmer work during the summer to do some voter registration and some outreach during freshman orientation. We felt that that was really important, and he makes $9.47 an hour because the minimum wage just went up in Washington. Our legislative affairs organizer, similar position, works about 15 hours a week throughout the whole school year, also makes a minimum wage. And in our office, which is pretty unique to us, we have our legislative liaison. This is a paid internship during winter quarter. It's full-time, working 40 hours a week. You're in Olympia, and you're making $10 an hour. So our legislative liaison is in Olympia right now, and he's working to represent all of us over there. He's working with other liaisons from other schools, trying to pass legislation that will have a positive impact on all of us here at Central and other students across Washington State. These just provide professional development opportunities for everybody that works in our office. They are coordinating volunteers to try to help us out with our events. They're managing different projects. So right now we're planning our student lobby day, and that's not just me that's planning that. That's my office staff as well. They're learning a lot about the legislative process, so they're scheduling meetings with these legislators and trying to get bills through, so they learn a lot about the process without having to watch Schoolhouse Rock or something. They're collaborating with campus and community partners, so I'll touch on this later, we work with CLCE, and we also work with the county auditor's office, things like that. And we do have the internship opportunity in our office, which is made available to any student that wants to apply for it. A little bit about the programs that we offer. I have touched on some of these. Voter registration drives every fall. We do have our Election Assistance Center, which I touched on a little bit. So that's every year on election day. We're down in CIRC 137. Students can come in and actually print out a ballot if they didn't receive one in the mail for some reason. And they can fill it out, tape it shut, write the name of their county on the front, and drop it into a temporary ballot box. So we've built an amazing relationship with our county auditor, and it's because of that that we're able to put on programs like that. We have days of action, so we'll get students together and we'll make phone calls to specific legislators that might have an influence over something that we're trying to pass in the legislature, and we just want to put some pressure on them. We do legislative trainings, so if students want to come in and learn more about some of the issues that Central Washington University is up against, we can train them on types of things to say to their legislator. And every year we work with Cynthia actually on College Civics Week, and we bring in guest speakers. So last year we brought in Congressman Dave Riker, and he came and spoke with all of us, which was a really fun opportunity. So what do students gain from all this? first of all, credibility in the legislature. You can't go to a legislator and demand something if you didn't actually vote. So we provide opportunities for them in that way. Students are being involved on campus. Students are staying tuned in to important issues that do affect them, so we try to spread that knowledge. And we contribute to statewide efforts, not just things that we want to happen at Central, but we want to make higher education accessible for as many students as possible across Washington State. So we work with the Washington Student Association very closely in order to do that. So areas where we collaborate, we work quite a bit with CLCE, the Center for Leadership and Community Engagement. They're one of our biggest partners. We work with 81 Bird to get some promos on the radio. We work with The Observer, the Kittitas County Auditor, and lately we've been partnering quite a bit with our administration and trying to model legislative agendas off of each other because we figured if we can have a united front, we're going to be much more effective. We also like to keep our money here on campus, so when we are advertising for events, we do go through our publicity center here. We also go through the Wildcat Shop for some things that we need. Just as an example, we have our student lobby day coming up in a couple of weeks, and we're putting together packets for everybody. So we bought folders from the Wildcat Shop, we bought some pens from them, all kinds of stuff that they're going to need. Some name tags and lanyards, and we figured we might as well keep the money here on our campus and utilize the services that the Wildcat Shop has to offer. And as well as student union operations, we go through, when we plan some of our events, we're definitely receiving services from them. Outreach to students, we do represent all students here at Central Washington University. When we go and say we're students from Central, we try to represent all of their interests. Directly, I would say we work with probably around 1,500 students. That's accounting for the number of students that attend our lobby day, the number of students that we register to vote, the number of students that come and drop off their ballots in our ballot boxes. So that's a rough estimate. Next slide, please. That's all I have. Are there any questions?
How long has the program been in existence? Do you happen to know?
That's not something that I do know the answer to. What's really unfortunate about this office is there's such a high turnover rate because you are in student government. And so luckily for me, this is my second year in the position, but for most people, they're only in that office for a year.
Yeah, I'm just curious. I'm sure it's a long time, I just don't know how long.
I have a couple questions. What is the difference in your class standing for your 3 office staff, and is that going to affect you as years go on? Like, do you have how many seniors, juniors, or do you freshmen, or what's that?
So within my office staff, we have 2 seniors and 1 sophomore. So I chose for those positions who I felt would be best for it. I didn't really factor in class standing, but it seems like there's usually an underclassman in there that works for a couple of years because they end up doing really well in that position. And sometimes they end up running for this office, which is what I actually ended up doing. So I started working in there as a sophomore and then ran for this position on student government. So there's no requirements for class standing, but it's just happened to work out really well the past few years.
And then last question, who is the legislative liaison this year?
His name is Trevor Justin. He's a senior here at Central. This is actually his last quarter, and he's from Olympia conveniently, so that worked out really well for him. He actually didn't have to pay for housing over there, so he's making quite a bit. And I was just in Olympia yesterday, actually. That's another thing that we fund is travel to and from Olympia. And so I went and worked with him, and it was easier to schedule meetings and plan our lobby day when I was actually there, rather than trying to do everything over the phone over here.
Does anybody have any further questions for Mr. Moore? All right, thank you very much.
Great, thank you.
Next, we'd like to welcome up the Observer for their base funding program review. You 10 minutes.
I just want to say Cassie and I both have very good tastes in Observer presentation or PowerPoint presentations, as you will understand. So, my name's Adam Wilson. I'm the editor-in-chief of the Observer. You've probably seen our newspaper about. We publish in print weekly, and we're trying very hard to work online daily. It's a little bit of a struggle right now, as I will explain later. But yeah. So our motto is by the students and for the students of CWU, and what we mean by that is that we are completely student-run. We do have a couple of faculty advisors. Cynthia Mitchell is one of them. But everything that we publish and all of the content that we generate is done by the students. Any story ideas that we can think of, any pictures, any graphics, just pretty much everything inside of here is done by students. They all deal with student issues, national issues that have to deal with college students, and as well as some local issues in Helensburgh. Just a little bit about how we actually function. We have this is all of our paid staff. As you can see, I'm at the top. I'm editor-in-chief. We have about 20 different people that are paid to work for the Observer. They're not all listed on here because I don't have the full list of the delivery team. But we have about 9 or 10 editors, and then 3 ad sales reps, as well as a student ad manager, and a graphic designer. And as you see on the next slide, once you incorporate the staff reporters who are not paid, but they are taking the class for it, there are a lot more. We have about, I want to say 30 or 35 people either working for us or taking the class for the Observer right now. It's a very large group, and I'm actually very happy about the turnout this quarter. So this quarter should be a very good one. A little bit more about how we actually use the money that S&A has granted us. We all work, the editing staff all works somewhere between 5 and 15 hours a week, depending on their position, as well as if they're employed somewhere else on campus. I earn $12 an hour and get 15 hours a week. And our lead section editors, our news, scene, sports, and our online editor all work for 10 hours a week. The assistants and the copy desk chief and photo editor get 5 hours a week. And we also all are in the class Comp 478, which is Advanced Newspaper Editing, which is a 3-credit class. So we also have, on top of the 5 to 15 hours a week that we work, we also have 9 credit hours, or 3 credit hours, so 9 hours a week on top of that. The other half of the payroll, which is on the next slide, our ad manager will work up to 19 hours a week at $12 an hour. Our ad sales reps will work 10 hours a week for $10 an hour. Our graphic designer, our graphic designer and our ad designer is the same person, so he effectively works 15 hours a week for $10 an hour. And everybody on the delivery team works 12 hours a week for $10 an hour. And they are not a part of the advanced newspaper editing staff, so they only work the amount that they get paid for. So we reach about we estimate about 13,000 people. We print about 6,000 copies. We figure, based on estimates, that each copy gets read about 1.5 times. Kind of a strange way that you can't really read it half the time, but that's the stat. So 13,000 readers. We currently have 985 followers on Twitter and 1,354 likes on Facebook. We are trying very hard this year to increase those numbers, and unfortunately I don't have any stats about growth in that area because I could only find stuff from the last growth from the last week on the Facebook page, and we didn't have class for the last month, so we don't have any growth right now. But that will rise very quickly as the quarter goes on. So cooperation on campus, obviously because we're a campus newspaper, we try to cover as much of campus as we can. As you can see, one of our biggest, the first thing that came to my mind when I was thinking about cooperation was how we cover a lot of what the theater department does. This is a preview of Les Miserables. So basically what other organizations on campus can do to cooperate with us is they can either advertise in our newspaper. If it's a really interesting event or a really interesting group, like a new club or something like that, we will do a feature story on them. We also, kind of skipping a little bit, but we also encourage anybody to write letters to the editor if they feel like the content or anything that we might have done wrong in the paper in a given week, if they felt like something was wrong, they were free to send us letters to the editor. We'll publish them just to let them know that we are very open and try to be as unbiased and objective as possible. Working more into media, we're also trying really hard, especially this year, to try to intermingle with the other kind of student medias on campus. So the Berg, Pulse Magazine, Newswatch, Cat TV, CWU Agency, we're all going to try to work very hard together to kind of bring more media engagement with students on campus. So our goals, I picked 3 keywords. First one is inform. Obviously, we're a newspaper. We want everybody on campus and around town to know what's going on campus. Whether that's any new scandals or hopefully more brighter news, like a really interesting person that deserves a lot of recognition. Whether that be sports or arts and entertainment or anything just really interesting going on, we want people to know about it. We want to make, and that also goes outreach, we really want to make sure as many people as possible know what's going on campus. And our last thing is critique. So not everything's lighthearted. Obviously, there's some very hard news that happens on campus and around town. We want to be there to basically expose those things and make sure things don't get out of hand with in those events. So I didn't have a slide for questions, but that was my presentation. Does anybody have any questions?
How were you selected as editor?
So the editor, for me to be selected as editor-in-chief, is basically a job application process. I was the only person who applied last spring, so I was pretty much selected as the only person. But generally, there's an interview process. We have a student media board that meets twice a quarter, and it's a group of about 15, I want to say, maybe more than that, who all interview the person in question, and all the student leaders of student media will vote on who they think would be the next editor-in-chief. And the same goes for all of our student media.
I was just wondering where you guys distribute them. Is it mainly on campus, or you go to stores downtown and stuff too?
I want to say the majority of our newspapers are distributed on campus. We put about 2 stacks on each newsstand that you see. And I want to say there's 5 or 6 in the circle alone.
There are 25 newsstands on campus, and there are 25 newsstands off campus.
Okay. So it's a lot more equal than that.
There are
Could've
more
sworn there
papers
were more.
delivered on campus.
Okay.
Where around town you might put 1 bundle at each location, there are a couple of bundles on campus.
Okay.
Cool. Any further questions from the committee?
Could you tell us about the awards paper?
That's right, I forgot to put that in. We have been nominated for many different awards over the past couple of years. Just off the top of my head, not last year, but the year before, we had won an award for Best Design. I don't have a picture of it, but it was a really interesting graphic work the entire package is called Think Before You Ink. And actually, Seth in the back was one of the people that worked on that when he was an employee of the Observer. It was on one half of the picture was a man in a suit, and on the other half was somebody with a huge sleeve tattoo. It was really interesting work, and I think it deserved the award that it got. We've been nominated for and have been in top of show, and we're not top, but top 3.
Okay,
last
the
year we won
last
Best
2
in
years,
Show.
we have been best all around in universities 10,000 and up for weeklies, top 3 in a 5-state region for the Society of Professional Journalists. It's a really big honor, and we compete with a lot of papers. Like now that the University of Oregon is only publishing weekly, we compete with them, and since they have a college of journalism with 600 people. So the last 2 years, top 3 in Washington, Oregon, Idaho, Montana, and Alaska. And then the 2 years prior to that, we were finalists for a national best award of excellence, kind of the Pulitzers of college journalism, pacemakers. So, and then we've had individual awards. We got first place in news last year for our admin fee coverage. The year before that, we got second place in news for our coverage of Madman Miller's scandals, and we've done really well. I'm super proud of them. I couldn't be any more proud. Anyway, so yeah, we're on the map.
Any further questions from the committee? I have one question about the class standing as well, and you have a lot more people, so I don't expect you to know every. But
Well, I actually do, as far as I'm I'm assuming you're meaning like juniors. the majority of the editing staff, I can't speak for the ads sales side, but the majority of the editing staff are seniors. I am a senior. I want to say 60 or 60% of them at least. Only a handful of them are going to be coming back next year.
We're about half.
And the rest of us are going to be graduating or just leaving the paper. Like, I don't believe I'll be coming back next spring or next fall just because I have another major I need to work on. But, yeah.
About 60-40 seniors and juniors on the editing staff, and then the full range on the reporting staff. We get some freshmen who worked for their high school papers and they loved it, and there they are. And then we have people who are, you know, seniors and never do want to be editors. They just want to be reporters, and then they come back.
The same is true for the advertising, sales, and business staff, from freshman to senior. It always varies.
I think that's it. Thank you very much. All right, moving on to other business communication received. I have not received any. Sharon has not either. Before I move to adjournment, I'd like to remind everybody our next meeting is on Wednesday, January 21st, here, 5:30. I'd also like to thank Nick for putting time out of your busy schedule to put this scenario analysis together. Really appreciate that. That helps us all visually see what we're doing. And I'd like to entertain a motion for adjournment.
Can I make a public comment real quick before we do that?
Oh, I missed public comment completely. I'm sorry.
It's okay. I just have a quick plug for an event that I'm holding on January 24th, which is a Saturday. It's a poverty simulation. What it is students come in and they get formed into different families, and you're given a family profile, and you have to sort of navigate living in a low-income family for 4 15-minute weeks. So you got to get your kids to school, you have to get to your job if you have one, or you have to apply for benefits, and that's bringing in people from the community to serve as the sort of community agencies and business roles. So students are the families, and the local folks and CWU staff and faculty are the community businesses and agencies. It's a really engaging experience. It's great for just raising awareness about poverty and low-income families. And students tend to enjoy it, even though it's not really a game. You're really supposed to be learning about poverty. So I'm inviting all students to attend. I've posted it on the campus FYI. If you want me to send you a link personally to more information about it, I'm happy to do that. So just let me know.
I have one thing too, if I can.
Yeah.
I think this might be something you're interested in. The wands from Macklemore is going to be on campus tomorrow. He's going to speak to the students at 11. He attended CWU. He didn't graduate, but he attended CWU as a music major, and I think he's got a lot of good things to say. Do you know who the Wands is? By chance, he's the guy.
I think I've heard of
Well, the thrift shop. He's the one with the line, the rapper. Yeah, the hook. Yeah. I can't repeat it here, but and then on Friday at 2 o'clock, there's this guy coming in. His name's PDQ Bach is his stage name. He's the only way I can describe him is he's like the Weird Al Yankovic of classical music. But he's very funny, and he's going to be in the concert hall at 2, and that's free also.
Boots and Cats too next week. We supported them last year. The
Yeah, the
October.
Boots and Cats show. When's that, next week?
Next week, Thursday. Yeah.
In the music building?
In the recital hall.
I
Yeah.
didn't even know about it. Okay.
All sorts of fun.
We would encourage you all to send press releases to this observer when you have these possible events.
Yeah, that was a lot of really interesting stuff.
It's convenient. You guys just happen to be sitting there.
Sharon, you had something else as well?
I just, a couple years, or either last year or the year before, we took the time to write down some really good guidelines and notes to, or items to, or checklists while we're listening to supplemental requests to help the committee members to be consistent in reviewing things, to know when we should call the question, or to help guide us through difficult decisions on whether to fund requests or to fund them partially. And we might want to unearth those guidelines and disperse them again.
I think I've been seeing them somewhere. They were passed out at some point.
Well, no, I think just hand them out and get them in front of people again.
Yeah.
We had those at the
They're
first few
complete.
meetings.
That's the one we made last year.
Because we've had those
Mhm.
No, that's.
Sound like it's just a good idea for people to remember how to do them.
Is there any additional public comment? You good, Josh? You have to raise your hand. And now I'd like to entertain a motion for adjournment. Josh, is there a second? Jessica, any discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? Any abstentions? Meeting is adjourned at 6:20 p.m.